Hello everyone, I'm Miranda from Miranda May Designs and co-creator at Piglet's Closet. I wanted to hop on with you guys and go ahead and start part 4 of our steampunk dresser that we've been working on. So you can see I'm sitting on the floor here. I don't know about where you guys are at, but it's hot where I am. So I'm on the floor of my studio, which is actually pretty cool, but I turned the fan off so you guys could hear better. So we are using today, where did I put it? The inked flash. It's a transfer by the CC Restyled line, and it is, I don't know if you guys can see all of the details here, but it's beautiful. The colors are very vibrant, and there's lots of things to choose from. So what I went ahead and did, was started putting this on because it's going to take quite a while. So the curved drawer fronts always, for me, take longer. And I decided that I wanted to go ahead and also curve over the center piece between the two drawers. So sometimes it's kind of a preference. Sometimes I'll choose to just do a transfer on the bottom drawer, skip the middle section, and do the top drawer. But for this transfer specifically, I felt like that space was just too large for what I was looking for. And so I wanted to go ahead and kind of connect them. So there's still going to be a little gap between the drawers, but it really kind of helps the eye put everything together. So that's where I started, and it was pretty tricky to do that. So what I did was I measured kind of from the bottom of the drawer to the top of this, and I gave a little bit more space just because it had to roll around these curves in here, and I wanted to make sure I got to the top of here. So I went ahead and just cut. It actually ended up being right along one of the grid lines, so that was nice, but I ended up using just an X-Acto knife and like a cutting mat. And so I'll kind of show you guys a little bit more later. So my drawer wasn't quite straight, so you'll notice, tilt you down a little bit. So down here, there's a little bit of a gap that you can see. And so I think what I'm gonna do, I still have the transfers. I'll probably end up just cutting a sliver and going ahead and replacing, kind of just placing that transfer piece on, and then you won't see it. So I did, the first thing I started with on this side is I ended up cutting where there's spaces, and so you can see, like, I've cut this flower out and I've cut the butterfly out so that it gives me a little bit more flexibility with the paper. And then as soon as I got most of this adhered right to the top, then I went ahead and burnished on, rubbed on with this stick, this first little lip here, and then I took an X-Acto knife and I cut the drawer right along the top of the drawer, and that gave me more space to work with. And then I ended up using 2 tools. So I ended up using, this is a redesign with Prima tool that I like to use sometimes, and I also like to use the sticks that come with the transfers. So it just kind of depends. So for this, I actually have been using both. So I took this, and this allows you to get really easily along the creases. And so I was able to get the transfer to stick really well in there. So I'm just going to continue. I wanted to show you how I went about doing this because it can be a little bit of a learning curve. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to do the second drawer. So I'm just taking my tool, and I still need to get this transfer laid down on the drawer itself. So and I did cover the holes for the hardware, which is okay. So when I'm ready, I'll just go ahead and punch that through. But I find it easier just to go ahead and cover it first and then come back later and go ahead and put the screws through. Make sure you can see in here. Okay. put my tool? There we are. So sometimes I like this to go over it after because I can get down a little bit harder. So this needs to, and I just go slowly, and I make sure that I have the transfer adhering well before I move on. So it's right there. And it just takes some time and some patience. I've learned to kind of, especially do some of the larger transfers when I am ready to sit for a while or ready to have some time to be able to spend with them, because they can definitely take some time, but they are worth it. So I'm kind of just going in different directions, lifting it, peeling back a little bit to see where I might need some more, and then laying it back down. And you want to make sure you have a firm grip on this sheet because you don't want it to slide and then accidentally rip off some of your transfer. And when I did the curve, when I first laid this out on this curved dresser, I centered it in the middle, and then I did from the middle to one side, kind of swooped with my hand going along the way, because you don't want to pull it tight and then not have enough space to put to lay the transfer down on the shallower part. So I'm going to go ahead and push the dresser drawer out so I can get the bottom here. And so I can see some bubbles kind of in here, which means it's not fully secured. So I'm going to go back and go over it, and then I will also use like a burnishing cloth, and I'll show you that in a minute. But if there's any bubbles left, I'm going to use a needle and just carefully get the air out. See one right there that isn't going to come out, and that's okay. That happens, especially when you're putting a large transfer on. Sometimes the bubbles will happen. So what I'm going to do is take this one that has more surface area, so I need to figure out where to put my needle. So we'll just keep going for now, and then I'm gonna get to this part, and I may end up cutting off some of this paper here so that we're not fighting it. see, bring you in real quick here, one at a time. If you can see the little bit of bubbles here that looks like it's bubbling, and that's okay. That means that it's just not adhered quite as well. So that's when they come back, lay this back down, and then go back over it again. And then if I still have any remaining bubbles, that's when we'll do the needle. But for the most part, they do lay really flat. And sometimes, like, this is oak, so it'll have a little bit more of that grain that you kind of have to make sure to get into all the grooves and really get it secured in there. So just takes a little bit more elbow grease. Okay, so before I cut that off, I'm gonna grab my needle, which I think is right here. So I just use a real, I don't even know if you can see it, but it's a real tiny needle. And I'm just going to gently just put one little pinprick in any bubbles that I'm not liking. And you won't see this once we go back over. Let's try that. You can hear one right there. Sometimes when you put it down, it's hard to pick back up. There we go. Okay. There's one right here. And then it just lays right down. Okay. So you don't want any bubbles in your transfers, because that's when they can lift or get any like of the sealer that you put on underneath them, and they can kind of seep behind there and come start peeling off. So you definitely don't want that. So I do my best, and we'll come back with a burnishing cloth as well, but I like to do my best to try to get it all out. And you're just allowing the air to come out from underneath the transfer. All right, it's looking better. So I have a cloth that I use. This one actually happens to be kind of like a burp rig that we retired, and so they're just very soft. And I will come back in and burnish and find any more bubbles, and then burnish over them to get them out. And I think this one's bubbling on me more than normal just because of all the curved surface and trying to get it laid down well without any wrinkles, and but that's okay because it's easy to take care of. and you can't see it. All right. See a couple more here. And again, I'm just putting the slightest pinprick in them to give the air a place to go. Some of this is like from the wood grain. There we go. Okay, so we'll continue. I'm gonna cut this back a little bit so I'm not fighting it. And then I do hold on to these sometimes because you can use them for paint, you can use them to go back over the transfers. They're just kind of handy, so I'll hold on to some of the sheets. Like I'll use them when I'm dry brushing or stenciling and need to get the paint off. Okay, so now I'm going to, let's see, I'm gonna move this over here so you can see better, hopefully. Okay, so let's start on the chain here. So this chain, part of it's already adhered. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish up to here, and you can see that I've cut this so that it gives me a little bit more flexibility, and I can cut it down further if I need to. I want to make sure that this part down here still see what I'm doing. All right. Sometimes around those smaller details, you really got to get the edges. So they don't peel. Okay, so now I'm gonna go and start up here. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Then I just wrap it where I think it's gonna lay. So you can see that. Okay, then I'm gonna take this, and the first part I'm gonna do is right along that edge. And I'm gonna take this carefully and try to get it along here. And get it secured, okay? All right, so then the next thing I'm gonna do, and it might look a little bit concerning to start, but I'm gonna cut. It's just because the acetate paper has come off of the transfer. They've separated, but that's okay. So you just want to then carefully come in here. Oops. Don't do that. And just work carefully and slowly. Actually, I think sometimes the smaller ones are harder. Without getting this one. And it's this curve that's getting me this time. So take it and get it up here. Okay, and then take and rub. The top on. Okay, so with these, because they are trickier, so once I get it set, I'm gonna take my finger and carefully rub, and then I'm gonna take my cloth and just rub in here. And you just want to rub carefully. You don't want to try to rub the edges off. You want to make sure that it's adhered. And sometimes you'll see like the little white edges, they'll peel up, and that's okay. Sometimes I just peel them off. And I got some there. Okay, so that's how I do that part. Got a little bit there that I don't like. And then I'm gonna pull the drawer out and get that bottom there. All right, so we will keep going. Looking pretty good. Okay, get this to stick. So next I'm going to work on the flower. I'm going to start from the bottom so I know where I want the top. slowly but surely. Patience is key with these. I'm just getting the edges really well, working slowly to peel it up and see. And again, I'm gonna cut this a little bit so I'm not fighting it. All right, so now this is right on a curve, so it's going to be a little tricky. So I'm going to kind of guess, and I'm going to try to rub my fingers on this one to try to get that curve. I don't know if this one's going to work as well. I'm going to go in here and really try to get it in there. Hopefully my head's not blocking you. So I'm really just trying to get it started. I don't want to tear anything, but I want it to stick so that when I cut it, it's in place. So I'm gonna go ahead and right along the top of the dresser drawer is where I've been cutting. And cut it. And I'm going to, let's see. I'll start by going over the top. And you just kind of work your way around, doing the best that you can. Oops, gotta get that piece on. Okay, so here's a good example of where I'm going to then take my finger and wrap it around. And then carefully kind of burnish it on there more. And so I'm actually going to take a bigger piece of this and kind of go back over it again. And just really make sure. I want to get into the details. I got the upper one too. Looks good. Okay. So now you can see, and this one I need to, that your eye kind of naturally fills in the spot where the gap between the drawer and that centerpiece is. Okay. All right. So now I want to be careful because this other one is not adhered yet. And I want to make sure we have the space. So that way it'll line up when I do the top. Hopefully you can still see it when it's not in the way. Our humidity level is really high here right now too, so you know that can make a difference. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the top. So this, I'm going to take this blue tape off carefully. Okay. So this butterfly is going to just, this wing will come to the very top of this drawer, so we won't need to wrap that up. Just want to make sure we get it secured. We'll just wrap that over. Okay. All right, so this part here, again, I'm just gonna kind of use my fingers and this sharp one in here. And maybe you can see better from the side what I'm doing. I'm just gonna take this and run it along that edge. Really try to get that first secure part down right along the edge, and then run this up. And this one, because it's rounded right here, is a little trickier. So I'll use the shorter one. And then try to go to the top. Okay, so now I'm gonna take and just cut right along that drawer there. Come back in. And just keep working at it. that's okay that that pulled off because that was just a clear part, but I'm gonna might end up sanding that off anyways. This top lip part, we'll see when we're done. Now I'm gonna pull the drawer out. Hopefully I'll get you in here so you can see this. And roll that around. Okay. Put you back. Okay, so push this back in. Use my little burnishing cloth and go over that. There we are. So now we just need to peel this part off, get it all secured. I like to go slow because I really don't want to lose or rip any of the details in the transfer, especially when that's busy. If you do, there's things you can do like painting, the spots. Sometimes you can distress transfers if you want more of a distressed look. But I find that just going slow, and that's where you want to be careful not to rip your transfer that way. So make sure you're holding above. I just try to go slow, so that I can be careful. All right, we did it. So the next thing that I will do is go through and make sure, look for any air bubbles. I still see a couple here that I'm gonna go back through and pop and then burnish over the top. And I'll burnish over here. These ones look good over here. I'm just gonna burnish the edges, especially on dark colors. The burnishing really helps kind of get rid of some of that halo that you can see sometimes. So I'll just go around and do that. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna lay out the top piece. So what I'm going to end up doing is cutting right along the edge of the bottom part here, and I'm going to place that at the very bottom of my drawer. But because this part comes out and the drawers sit in, I am actually going to cut the transfer off at the drawer top. So I am going to cut around and use the rest of the transfer pieces to place elsewhere. So the first thing I'm going to do, and hopefully you guys can see me here. Let's get you back a little further. Okay, so the first thing I am going to do is take this and I'm going to cut it. So I know that I want the clock to be whole on the drawer, and so that's kind of how I centered it. That's why I cut off some of the bottom, is to make sure that most all of the clock will fit on the piece. So I'm going to go in here and cut right along this flower. I know that the first time I cut a transfer apart, I was so worried about, oh, am I gonna ruin it? But it actually kind of is fun. I enjoy, not very rarely do I use an entire transfer in entirety. I like to kind of piece them together and use parts of them. This one is just a little bit different because of the nature of the transfer, but I could save it for other projects if I wanted to. Because of the size of this dresser, I'm going to use a lot of them. Probably all of them. Alright, so that I'm going to put up safely, and we're going to use that elsewhere. This we're going to continue cutting this clock out. There. So what we're left with is this. Okay, so I don't think the leaves, they might fit on the drawer. I think the top of them might get cut off, and that's okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the drawer in, which is behind me. I had it out so that I could get the other drawer out, so this will be, it's always tricky to get them out. What I should do probably is pull, well, that's okay, I'll get it out. Let's see if I can't remember if there's a top to this. I think there's a bottom, so I can't reach the drawers. There we go. This way I can push it out. That tape is sticking from here. Okay. So we will, I'm gonna make sure it's clean. And then I'm going to line it up. The clock is going to be the biggest kind of focal point, so I'm going to make sure to line it up. And I do need to cut it off right here. So I'm going to take, you can cut it with scissors. I like to use a straight edge and an X-Acto knife. So that's what I'm going to do real quick. And I'm just going to do it on the floor. So I have my mat. Hopefully you can see. And I'm just going to take it, lay it down, and just cut right along the transfer edge. I just think it gives a cleaner edge. It's easier for me to just quickly do it. And not have squiggly cutting lines. Okay, here we go. So now we are ready to lay it directly on the drawer bottom. So how I'm gonna do this is very carefully, let's tilt you back up, peel it off, and I'm gonna just work with these leaves and see where they get cut off at. I could probably go ahead and cut it a little bit so it doesn't cause me trouble. Okay. So I'm gonna peel it off, and I probably leave this part of it on so that I can grab it more easily. And I'm gonna line it up. So this is the tricky part, because you don't want to touch the transfer, but you have the long okay, so and what's happening that I don't like is that this drawer also is not straight. So I think what I'm gonna do is put some small cuts in to try to give me some flexibility to move them down, kind of shift it a little bit carefully. Okay, so I like that. So that cut just allowed me to kind of manipulate it a little bit down, which is a little trick that I learned. Okay, so let's go ahead and then do this side. So same thing. Let's see how it's lining up pretty well. Okay, nice, I like that. So I will come in over here, just kind of go along it. And just initially get it secured, and then I'm going to work down this side. So that one up there. Well, this I'm going to cut a little bit. Just give it a little bit more give right there, and then see how we're doing here. Okay, and this butterfly might give me a little bit of trouble here, so we'll see. So I'm going to, the curves can be challenging. And sometimes where cutting just little slits here and there will really kind of help. Sometimes if you carefully, sometimes you can relift the transfer if you haven't pushed it down. You want to be really careful when you're doing that. But that ended up working for me. So, there we go. We did it. We did it. So I'll go through and I'm going to just do the same process that I did before. And I'm going to burnish it, and then I'm probably going to take some of these, because I have a hard edge over here on this side. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's kind of a harsh edge on this transfer. And so what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to take like a star, and I might put it right here, or one of the clouds, and maybe kind of just put it on so that it kind of helps the eye not see such a harsh line. And then the rest of them I'm gonna put, kind of see where they fit, but use them in different places on the front. And then on the sides we're gonna do something different with stencils and possibly some new release coming out from Redesign with Prima, so we will see. That might be a sneak peek in the future. So I will let you guys go. I appreciate you hanging on with me, and I know that's a tedious process, but I think it's always scary to try to do the curved, at least for me, to do the curves, and so I wanted to show you kind of that it's possible, and how I go about doing it. So, all right, well, I hope everybody has a great rest of the day, and we will catch you again soon.